This is the rebuild kit that I have for this particular jet pump. It's got the wear ring, the impeller shaft, and then all the bearings and a couple little O-rings. So now that we got the jet pump off the ski, first thing we're going to do is just clean it up. We've got the whole bunch of sealant and stuff that they used putting it on, so we're just going to clean this up really quick. We'll start out by taking these O-rings. These are the Venturi jets here. Get rid of these old ones, clean it off, and install the new ones. Next, we'll start taking this cone apart. Inside this is all the oil for the impeller shaft, so just be ready with a catch. This is the quote-unquote drain plug, which is currently plugged full of dirt. Next, you'll remove those three 4mm Allens. You can see this, but there's actually water dripping out of this, which isn't a good sign. It's quite full of water. And then there's all that goo. I have this thing sitting on the oil pan right now. I've got the cone upside down just to let it finish oozing out. And same with this, so that it's just going to drip out. But meanwhile, we can take this cone off here. You should just be able to do it by hand. Yeah. So to get this impeller out, we've got our new shaft here. This is the end of it over here, and the other end is right at the other end of the splines here. So this is going to be assembled with red Loctite, which means it's going to be really stuck on there. So what we're going to do is we're going to heat the end of this up. You don't want to hit the impeller itself, but heat just the end of the shaft up to break that Loctite down. So next, what you're going to need is this impeller removal tool. I ordered it on Amazon. It was about 10 bucks shipped. Basically, this goes in the spline side of the impeller, and you're going to basically hook this up, hook the vise on this side of the shaft, and then stick this in this side, and you're going to spin this, and the vise will keep the impeller from spinning, and we'll let you unthread it. That's your remarkably hot impeller. And now with the impeller out, you can take this entire housing out, which reveals all your, got your thrust bearing. And on the inside of this, I'm not sure if we can see it, but we got the bearings that are inside there too. And if you remember earlier, when I took the cone off, water poured out. So these probably aren't going to be in the best of shape. So next we're going to take the wear ring out. You can see mine's got a decent amount of damage. It's not smooth at all anymore. And that's just from rocks going through the impeller, throwing the impeller off. You can see the dings in here too. It's had its fair share of wear. So what we're going to do is we're going to set the 4 mounts here on 2x4s so that we have room for this to slip out. And you're going to take your screwdriver and you're going to set it on the lip in there, and you're going to tap. You're going to tap all the way around until this thing will slowly start to slide out. You can see that wear ring is starting to come out now, and you just want to keep on going around the circle until that thing's all the way out. There's your old wear ring. And then you can see our new one. And then there's the old race. We'll go ahead and clean that up and prep it for the new one. So we're going to go ahead and put the new wear ring in the freezer because it's going to make it a lot easier to install. And we'll go ahead and finish putting it in just a little while. So next we're going to start servicing the all the bearings in here. And first thing we got to do is get rid of this oil seal to access the bearings. I just have a homemade seal puller here. You can get one for cheap at AutoZone or whatever. But you're basically going to take your seal removal and just pry up and get this guy out without hitting the race. Just like that. Alright, so next, if you see, I machined this punch real quick. All you need is an 1 1/8 or a little bit less for the outer dimension, and then about 2 3/4 long, and that's going to be your punch. You can, I'm going to beat it out with a hammer because I'm replacing the bearings, and you'll probably be fine doing the same too, but if you have a press, you might want to use the press instead. I have a press, but this is just going to be easier for me. So we'll punch it out now. And there you go, you got both bearings out. You got your races. You want to clean those out and just prep it as best you can for the reinstall of the new ones. Alright, now we're going to install the new bearings. Kind of cleaned out the races. They look really good on this one. The old bearings didn't look bad at all. But I've got the Seadoo manual that I'm using, and it says to insert these and have them be between, or this particular one on the oil seal side needs to sit sub flush 60 to 100 thousandths deep. And you can, like I said earlier, you can use a press on this if you want to be really exact, but I have a pretty good tool here, and I think I can, if I'm careful, I can insert this with just the tool and a light tapping. So that's how we're going to do it. So yeah, about 75 thousandths, so that's completely acceptable for that side. And then we'll go ahead and flip this thing over and install the other seal, or the other bearing. And this one wants you to be 80 to 120 thousandths sub flush. So like I said before, make sure that's nice and clean. Just basically repeat what you did on the front side. Right there at 100. Alright, so next we're going to install this oil seal. We've got the bearing in. The manual calls for this gasket maker. It's a Loctite 518. I've got the Permatex version of it. Basically, you just throw this stuff on the outer diameter and the bottom of the seal before you install it. Alright, so we got this thing all gooped up with the gasket maker. Little spring right there. It's gonna be facing down. It's just like doing like an axle on a car. I set it in here. And I'm using the same tool that I used to install the bearings. This was 1 1/4 inch outer diameter originally, and it fits pretty well with that seal. So we're just going to use this. It's a little small, but we should be able to make it work. So just line it up and just tap it in nice and smoothly until it bottoms out. This is important that it bottoms out. After you finish tapping this in, you want to make sure you wipe all the excess gasket off, because you don't want that getting into any of the bearings, drying into the bearings, because then you'll be starting all over and doing this again. Alright, so now we just pulled our wear ring out of the freezer. I'm going to kind of set it in here. It just falls right in actually. It's about as easy as it gets there. Make sure it's bottomed out. Make sure your race is clean before you drop it in. And as it heats up, it'll swell right in. So I've got there's the old shaft that goes through there. You can see it's got the bearing, thrust bearing, and the thrust washer. I've got a brand new shaft. Basically, you're gonna put it on in the same order. So you've got the new thrust washer. Slides on there. The new washer. Goes on right after that. And you can go ahead and slide this back through from the bottom. Nice and snug, just like that. Alright, so if you're going by the manual, it says to put primer on the threads before you put the red Loctite. You could probably get by without using the primer, but since I have it, I'm going to use it. So just go ahead and let it drip on all the threads. It says to let it dry for 2 minutes. And then go for the impeller. So you're going to take just a little air grinder to the impeller. You don't want to take enough off to unbalance it. You're basically just taking the rough edges off, which is what I'm going to do here. Alright, so now that the impeller's all buzzed down, you want to put your Loctite 271 is what the manual calls out for, so that's what we're going to use on the threads. Just get a nice coating of that on there. And then go ahead and thread your impeller back on. And then you're going to tighten the same way that you loosened it with the vise and the impeller tool. The manual calls out for the torque spec to be on this particular pump 52 foot-pounds. Right about there. Okay, so now we got the shaft in, we got all the bearings, the seal in. We'll start putting the cap back on. The manual calls out for a little bit of gasket right here. The O-ring will go on top of that. So we're just going to put a tiny bead gasket. This is the Loctite 518 or the Permatex 518. And go ahead and put your seal on. Like so. And then you can go ahead and install this guy back on there. So next you want to fill the pump up with oil. I'm using 7590 GL5 synthetic oil. You want to fill it up, it says, to the base of the set screw. So I'm interpreting that as pretty much until it comes out the set screw. Right about there. And make sure you shake it back and forth a little bit. Make sure you get all the air out of there. Top it off and just repeat until she's full. Alright, so we're going to start getting this jet pump all ready to reinstall here. Just a couple things we need to do first. First off, you want to take some synthetic grease and goop up the splines really well. Go ahead and do that, and then install the boot here. Like that. And then go ahead and take your jets, your Red Cherry jets, and you can slip that back in there. On this model it just slides in, nothing else holds it on. And then I'm going to take some RTV blue using the Permatex stuff. Gasket maker, and you're basically going to put a bead all the way around the outside of this wear ring. You can get on the wear ring a little bit, but just don't get inside here. Next, you're gonna prep the hole for this, and the only thing you really need to do is throw some thread locker blue on these 4 holes here, the 4 bolts, and make sure that all the seal, the mounting surface, make sure that's clean. Make sure your Venturi jet holes are clean, and then take your pump, go ahead and slide it on. Try and keep everything clean. Yeah. It took a little bit of finessing to get the output shaft back in that boot, because right now the output shaft, there's nothing supporting it, so it naturally just hangs down. So I had to prop a little bit underneath there and feed it in, but once you're in, you can start bolting everything back up just the way you took it off. There's nothing else that's specially needed other than putting some more gasket on this surface here, just a little bit for the Venturi, and that's it.